Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer. Let me ask you a quick question right out of the gate. How much time do you spend stressing over money? Seriously. Because we're tackling a topic today that literally impacts every single one of us. And yet somehow, it's something most of us were just never properly taught how to handle. Today, we're breaking down the core principles from Ramit Sethi's wildly popular book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And hey, if that title sounds a little, gimmicky to you, just put that skepticism aside for a second. What we are really looking at here is a highly direct, strictly no BS methodology for taking back control of your personal finances. We aren't talking about skipping your daily latte, and we're definitely not meticulously tracking every penny you spend on chewing gum. It's about setting up a powerful, automated system that lets your money work for you, completely guilt-free.
So to really understand where this entire philosophy comes from, we actually have to go back in time a little bit. Picture Ramit Sethi as a high school kid. His parents basically sit him down and give him a pretty harsh reality check. They tell him, look, if you want to go to college, you're going to have to figure out how to pay for it yourself through scholarships. So what does he do? Like any highly motivated kid, he doesn't just apply for one or two. No, he painstakingly researches and applies for roughly 60 of them. He builds this massive, complex system just to get to college. And you know what? It worked. He ended up winning hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the very first one he won was a physical check for $2,000 written directly to him. I really want you to picture this. A teenager holding a $2,000 check. That is an absolute fortune at that age. Ask yourself, what would you do with a sudden $2,000? The temptation to go buy a car or, go on a crazy trip is huge. But Ramit, he decided he was going to be smart. He took that check, completely bypassed all the normal teenage splurges, and put it straight into the stock market.
And almost immediately, poof, he lost half of it. Yup, a massive, gut-wrenching negative 50% return. Just gone. Why? Because despite being this really smart kid who hustled so hard to get that scholarship, he had absolutely zero real financial literacy. He had no clue what he was actually doing. He was essentially just gambling. Now, I absolutely love starting with this example because it establishes something so deeply important. Literally, even the foremost financial experts start off making incredibly painful, frustrating mistakes. It is perfectly okay if you feel totally lost right now when it comes to investing or paying off debt, because literally everyone starts at zero. But here is where the story completely shifts. That brutal early failure, it was actually the catalyst for everything that followed. Instead of just throwing his hands up, retreating, and deciding the stock market was some rigged scam, it motivated him. He relentlessly studied and mastered how money actually works. He read all the books, watched the shows, and eventually he started teaching his own friends over at Stanford. That entire journey culminated in the creation of this very program. It's an authoritative, super practical guide designed to help everyday people build an automated financial infrastructure so that we don't have to suffer those exact same early mistakes.
Section 1. Invisible money scripts. So before we can even start talking about the math of getting rich, we have to talk about the psychology behind it. Managing money isn't just about spreadsheets and numbers, right? It's heavily driven by what Ramit calls invisible money scripts. These are the subtle, often totally subconscious messages we've absorbed over the years from our parents, our friends, and just society at large. And they guide our financial decisions for decades. What's really interesting here is how these scripts actually play out in real life. Let's say someone is deep in debt. They might say something like, well, paying interest is just like any other fee. This is what we call normalization. It's just the brain's way of making a 14, 18, or even 20% credit card interest rate seem completely fine, when mathematically it is an absolute emergency. Or how about this one? These credit card companies just try to trap you. Look, yes, credit card companies want you to pay fees, absolutely. But relying on this script means you are completely surrendering responsibility for the very real purchases that got you into debt in the first place. Or, I'm just trying to do my best, which really just translates to hopelessness and a lack of agency. These scripts paralyze us. Until you take ownership, external factors are just convenient villains that keep you stuck.
Section 2. Smart Sally versus Dumb Dan. Okay, so once you break through those psychological barriers, the next major hurdle is simply taking action. People are always waiting for the perfect time to start investing, or they think they need to be total financial experts first. Well, let's look at a visceral, absolutely undeniable mathematical example to prove why starting early is the single most important factor. Let's introduce Smart Sally and Dumb Dan, and this brilliantly illustrates the magic of compound interest. Okay, so Smart Sally gets her act together at age 35. She invests just $200 a month for 10 years. Then, by age 45, she stops entirely. She never adds another dime to that account. Her total out-of-pocket investment? $24,000. Now look at dumb Dan. Dan waits. He doesn't start investing until he's 45. To make up for all that lost time, he invests that exact same $200 a month, but he does it for 20 straight years until he's 65. So Dan invests a total of $48,000. That is literally twice as much of his own hard-earned cash as Sally.
So who ends up with more money at age 65? Guys, it's not even close. Assuming an 8% return, Smart Sally ends up with over $181,000. Dumb Dan, despite investing for twice as long and contributing twice as much of his own money, ends up with only about $118,000. That is a staggering $60,000 difference in Sally's favor. It is undeniable mathematical proof that the single most important thing you can do to be rich is to just start early. You really don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You literally just need to get in the game. Section 3, Defeating the Victim Mindset.
So if the math is so incredibly clear, why don't more people just do it? Well, this brings us to a really harsh reality that Ramit tackles head-on: the victim mindset. We live in a culture where it's incredibly common to point fingers at the economy or politicians for our financial woes, rather than taking absolute agency over what we can actually control. Listen to this. During the last economic downturn, Ramit ran a Save $1,000 in 30 Days challenge to show people tactical ways to cut costs and earn more. Thousands of people succeeded, but he was blown away by the people who were genuinely offended by the very idea of even trying. He received emails exactly like this one. "Doing this is impossible for me. I don't make enough to try this exercise." Instead of looking at their own habits, their default reflex was immediately, "I can't."
Or take a look at this incredibly cynical response to the challenge. Nice idea, but the current median family income here in Ohio is $58,000 a year. I doubt many of them could save $1,000 a month without selling off their children. Now, listening to this strictly from a psychological standpoint, this right here is the sound of someone completely surrendering their agency. It's building a giant wall of excuses so you don't have to face the real discomfort of actually changing your behavior. But the harsh reality is, relying on these scripts just keeps you paralyzed. The ultimate cost of this belief isn't just failing a 30-day challenge. It's literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in missed gains over a lifetime.
Section 4. Taking action on debt.
The good news is we do not have to stay stuck in that mindset. We can shift from the paralysis of being a victim to the sheer empowerment of taking actionable steps right now. And one of the absolutely most powerful places to start is by aggressively attacking the debt that's holding you back. So the crucial point is that your lenders are not these untouchable monoliths. They're just businesses. They would much rather get some money from you on a restructured timeline than have you default and give them absolutely nothing, right? That is your leverage. Ramit suggests picking up the phone today and asking your lenders these exact 3 questions. First, ask, what would happen if I paid $100 more per month? See how that drastically changes your interest. Second, what would happen if I changed the timeline of the loan from 5 years to 15 years? And third, if you're really struggling, ask, what if I'm looking for a job and can't afford to pay for the next 3 months? Just having these conversations can unlock massive savings and completely restructure your financial reality.
And hey, if you don't believe a simple phone call can work, let's look at some real-world proof from everyday people actually using this system. Take Lila Nutt. She called in, changed her student loans from a 20-year term down to a 10-year term, and committed to paying just an extra $50 a month. Think about the psychology of this win for a second. She didn't have to win the lottery or get some massive promotion at work. She just found an extra $50, literally the cost of maybe a couple of takeout meals a month, and applied it to a shorter term. That tiny friction removed over $10,000 of interest over the life of her loan. $10,000.
Let's see how this builds with another example. Take Dan Bowman. He had $10,000 in private student loans, sitting at an 8% interest rate. He made the call, negotiated a refinance down to 6%, and instantly saved himself $2,000. Frame this around the time investment. Think about this. A single phone call that probably took Dan, 20 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon, netted him a $2,000 return. Seriously, where else can you get an hourly rate like that? It just required him to drop the excuses, pick up the phone, and take agency over his situation.
And for those of you out there thinking, well, my debt is way too high for these little tricks to actually matter, let me introduce you to Sean Wilkins. Sean was carrying around the heavy burden of $40,000 in debt. But once he faced his invisible scripts, he didn't just try to blindly work harder, he automated his finances. He built a system so the debt was being attacked in the background while he went on living his actual life. By systematically applying these principles, he wiped out that entire $40,000 in under 2 years. When you have an automated system, even a seemingly insurmountable mountain of debt can be quietly and efficiently conquered. Section 5, Living Outside the Spreadsheet. Which brings us to the ultimate philosophy of this entire explainer. The end goal of personal finance is not to become obsessed with money. It's really not. It's not about turning into some spreadsheet nerd who tracks every tiny fluctuation in the market or feels guilty every single time you buy a coffee. The goal is to set up a robust, automated financial system and then get on with your actual life. The book lays out this exact process in a 6-week program. First, you optimize your credit cards so they actually pay you. Then you beat the banks by ditching all those predatory fees. You open your investment accounts, getting ready to invest, even if you literally only have $50 to start. You implement conscious spending, which means spending extravagantly on the things you truly love while cutting costs mercilessly on the things you don't. You automate everything so you're saving while you sleep. And finally, you completely ignore the myth that you need to be a Wall Street financial expert to succeed. Ramit calls this the 85% solution. Getting it 85% right and taking action today is infinitely better than doing 0% because you're paralyzed trying to be perfect. And that leaves us with one final incredibly important question to ponder as we wrap up today. What does your rich life actually look like? Because a rich life is defined completely by you. For some people, it's living in a Manhattan high-rise. For others, it's paying for a massive backyard for their kids or being able to travel business class for free using credit card points. The math and the automated systems, they're just the vehicle. It's up to you to grab the steering wheel, tear up all those excuses, and decide exactly where you want to go. So take that first step today. Start building your system. Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer, and we'll see you next time as we continue breaking down the ideas that can absolutely change your life.